Peasant Productions presents The Math of ESP, why it works even if you don't believe in it. It's been going back and forth through a variety of things here about the products and stuff like that. Taking a step a little bit further backwards, okay, we need to get a lot of transport between surface and space in a hurry. One of the reasons why the bamboo and hemp, or some kind of plant material, carbon fiber came to mind is because with the original space shuttle, they used a system of tiles. Okay, approximately 1980, I spoke with a gentleman who worked for NASA when I believe he was an engineer. He was renting from me in Burbank, and he lived up somewhere in Northern California, so he would fly up and down from where I was living there in Burbank, which was just up the block from the Boeing or somebody like that, in the aerospace industry, and the airport was just down the road and stuff like that. Very convenient for him to be there for his 5 days and then fly back up with the family. Anyway, I asked him why they used tile. Okay, why were they using these tiles? I mean, did he see the failure in it? He basically chuckled and laughed and walked away. Okay, 1980. I'm 22 years old at that point in time. 81, yeah, I don't think it was 81, it might have been 80 or 81, but 22, 23 years old, yeah, right, what do you know, I was a kid, okay? Needless to say, the space shuttle, the tiles have been consistently enough of a problem that a bunch of people, well, not a bunch, a few people lost their lives in one of the space shuttles going down. At that point in time, I was very much aware of ferro-cement boat building, and I was also, because I was involved in watching the Formula One races and the America's Cup sailing yacht races, I was also very much aware of carbon fiber. Okay, so I understand the layering process. I also understood that if you take this carbon fiber stuff, and while, yes, the majority of the strength, just like a piece of plywood, is in the layering of those long strands. So they got them going this way and that way and diagonally and all this kind of stuff. And it gives your material an awful lot of strength. One of the next things down is where you're using shorter strands, and they're just, all randomly through. And it's very, very strong and not real pretty, and it's not real smooth and all of that either for that kind of particle board type stuff. But it does have quite a bit of strength. It's a very slow and long, lengthy process to put a few tiles on. For me, it was real simple. Why not take the ferro-cement idea, build yourself a wire frame of titanium which takes the heat, it expands and contracts as needed, it doesn't really break down and all of that. You have your wire frame of your basic shuttle stuff, you have all of your, your tubing, your protections and things like that, and then you just blast carbon fiber material into all of this the same way you blast fiberglass in. Yeah, blown mold injection plastic, blown mold injection cement, blown mold injection fiberglass. Why can't they do it with carbon fiber? At that point, you can then be producing, probably a space shuttle a month if you wanted to, per factory. So if you have 100 factories, you have 100 space shuttles a month. Makes much more efficiency than sitting there and trying to glue little tiles on, because every tile, where it comes together, folks, that's called an air gap. And excessive heat goes through those air gaps and creates problems. You have room for any kind of failure. You have no structural strength because they're just glued side by side. My particles one long consistent ship. The whole thing is there. You make it this thick if you want. It doesn't matter if it's a foot, a foot thick. Well, no problem. You want to put some kind of radiation type, lead particles in there in layers and stuff. No problem. We can put all kinds of shielding and all kinds of stuff in there, and you got that outside, carbon fiber body. And ceramic is also a liquid when it's poured on, so you can definitely just coat the outside with a liquid while you've got it all in that same frame. You make castings of the ceramics in large sections, so you have only a few joints where things break and burn through. So that's why I say there's a lot of things here that can be done. For those of you that are sitting up there and thinking, yeah, a bunch of domes in the sky, no problem, Donald Trump will fire a missile up at it. Keep in mind that it takes a very huge amount of power and energy to send a missile up into space. It's very noticeable going up. It's very easy to track with a pair of binoculars. On the other hand, if you are at all familiar with satellites, you know of what's called micrometeorites and floating objects in space that are traveling at anywhere from, say, a few hundred miles an hour. Somehow it slows down that much. Yeah. So, well, one of your geosynchronous orbit satellites, they're in a stationary position, so there's only so fast they go. But something that goes up in a standard orbit, like the space shuttle or something like that, they're traveling at a couple of thousand feet per second, something like that. Could be close to a few thousand miles per second. You get into some of the celestial bodies out there moving around, because they've been impacted or exploded or whatever. So you got to worry about just a random piece of something hitting. So if I'm sitting up there on one of my domes and I got myself a potato cannon, I guarantee your nuclear missile is going to get a potato. And that potato is going to do more damage to that missile than that missile's atomic or nuclear bomb is going to do by the time it gets anywhere close to my domes. Okay? I can take them out for potatoes and peanuts. I can be picking up rock. I can be throwing chunks of ice. Because at zero, absolute zero, ice is pretty frickin' hard. And it'll just shred any missile. So yeah. I can protect myself up there. I can show others how to protect themselves. It's a lot easier to throw a rock down a well than it is to throw a rock up a well. The planet is a gravity well. You got problems if you want to argue about how this person and this system can't operate free from the United States, Donald Trump's, North Korea's Kim, Putin, the Queen of England, whoever you want to pick on, it doesn't matter. You get off this planet, those governments are down here below. They're left behind. Okay? And there's a lot of other things too. I don't know, how much time have I got here? How long have I been yakking? Oh, only 9 minutes, really good. Okay. Sometimes I forget to look at my clock so I know when my 15 is up. Propulsion systems on my rats to go out and get the asteroids, okay? I believe I discussed it slightly before. It's a matter of using, basically a hot boilerplate type of an idea. Nuclear generators up there, no problem. All the nuclear fuel down here that's waste can be hauled up there and reprocessed or tossed into the sun where it's not going to do any damage to anyone. It's just going to get recycled back into its particles. But the idea of being out there, think about the idea that, okay, you want to go out to the asteroid belt, so you go find yourself a chunk of rock that you can grind up and spray onto your hot plate. That gets you out there. Worst comes to worst, you're in a society or some kind of city. You got a grinder that grinds up the city garbage. spray city garbage pieces onto that hot plate. It still atomizes it. It still puts it out as such a fine small particle. It's not a problem. It's getting dumped into space where it's not really a problem anyways. Then somebody comes through, it's like a comet field maybe. You get yourself out there to where you're at, you just pick out an asteroid that you know is going to have enough left over to make yourself a profit with. Or maybe you tie two together. One is a chunk of rock to grind up and run the engines going back home. The other part happens to be a chunk of solid gold, Gee, look, Ma, I just found a mile-long piece of gold. What do you think? Do you think the market will crash? Yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. You got to have a little humor at the idea of what might be out there in the asteroid field if it's a broken-up planet. And that's 99% of the probability exists in that realm, simply because it's logical that if it's on a planetary rotation, elliptical orbital situation, and it's a huge pile of debris that follows what would have been a planetary orbit, it probably was a planet that met with a sad collision with something. Anyway,